Before the mast, Nightingale crept almost silently through the crowd, eyes fixed on her target. There were at least 100 of her fellow students there, thronging about and chatting excitedly in their teams of four. Her victim wasn't watching anything but the cigarette in his fingers. He didn't stand a chance. Air rushed around Nightingale as she jumped and latched onto Zeke's back with both arms. Zeke! Her voice came out somewhere between a squeal and a screech, loud enough that a few nearby students turned to stare. Her friend grunted and spluttered, the cigarette tumbling away from his mouth. You trying to kill me? Nightingale dropped to the ground behind him. You don't need my help for that. She extinguished the still smoldering cigarette with a well placed step. 2 years away from Earth, and you're still poisoning yourself? Zeke only grinned in response. It also makes you smell terrible, someone said from behind them. They both turned, and Nightingale's eyes widened when she saw her sister, Shaylis, standing there. Nightingale was usually thrilled to see her, but today was different. Today, Shaylis was one of the proctors on the most important test of their new lives, the Magical Aptitude and Skill Test, or the MAST for short. Makes me smell terrible? Zeke scoffed. See here, I was expecting something like "It's so good to see you, Zeke," or maybe "How'd you do on your written exams?" You know, friend stuff. No favoritism today, Shayla said. She sounded stern, but she was grinning at them as she flipped through the few pages on a worn clipboard. Oh, but look at that. Lucky you. Looks like you two ended up together. What a coincidence, Nightingale muttered, rolling her eyes. They put the royal heirs together. Consider that the only luck you'll get today, Shayla said. Nightingale looked around, wondering who their other partners would be. Of course, she and Zeke would be in a group together. She knew why Shayla didn't want to broadcast it, though. Nightingale knew of the students around them, the short girl with multicolored eyes, another with a pair of oversized bat wings, the kid with the strange goat-like hooves instead of feet, but none of them were actually friends. Each team has 4 people, Zeke said. Who are the other 2? Rook Lars and Remy Moretti. Shaylis frowned at the clipboard for a moment, then shrugged and tucked in under one arm. You need me to point them out? Nah, we're good. Zeke briefly rested one hand on Nightingale's shoulder and pointed toward the largest student in the assembly hall. I see Rook there. If you're not already acquainted, I've got only another few teams to assign before I explain everything. Shaylis walked away, vanishing effortlessly into the crowd. Guess it makes sense. Rook's got to be the smartest student here, Zeke said. They started walking toward him, Nightingale leaving it to Zeke to clear a path for them. Nightingale lowered her voice so that the other students nearby couldn't hear. Sure, Rook makes sense. Remy, though? Isn't her dad some kind of mafioso? Who thought it was a good idea to pair someone like that with royalty? Couldn't make it look like favoritism, so they give us a boat anchor to balance out our awesomeness. Zeke shrugged. Every team has 4, so long as she doesn't slow us down, we'll be fine. Rook was easily double the size of Nightingale, with hands like hammers and a beard like a lion. Hey Zeke, Rook called. They met with a bone-cracking embrace. Remy stood just behind him, arms folded awkwardly in front of her. She looked up, smiling politely and extending a hand. Hey, I guess we're together for the test, Princess Nightingale Arsene. Ma'am. Remy peered at Nightingale through impressive multicolored dreadlocks, her massive owl-like wings folded behind her, making Remy's small frame look a little bigger. Just Nightingale, she corrected, taking the offered hand. You're Remy, right? Yeah. Remy looked past her and up to the gigantic Rook, who was still talking with Zeke. I know I'm probably not the teammate you were hoping for. She didn't get a chance to respond because at the moment her sister stepped onto a raised platform at the edge of the hall and shouted, "All right, listen up, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Aptitude and Skill Test. If any of you have doubts about your ability to complete the mask, the door's right there. You will be required to go through the Arcebus, the Academy's training dungeon. Don't think the bellicose cubes make up for stupid mistakes, because they don't. Students have died during this test." There were a few seconds of silence. "We're going through the doors behind me, to the armory. Each of you is entitled to one pack of supplies. Choose wisely. If you get halfway through the test before you realize you didn't bring something important, too bad." She paused, waiting for her statement to sink in. "If you have any last questions, ask either me or another proctor before you get into the dungeon. Once the test starts, you'll only get my help if things go very wrong." She raised her voice, glaring once around the room. "For the sake of your grades, you do not want our help. We won't let you die, but if any of us have to come down and save you, we won't let you pass either." There were no questions. Shayless turned and hopped off the edge of the platform. "Follow me to the armory." The armory was well stocked, so none of them would go into the dungeon wanting. After selecting their gear, they made their way through a lonely hallway to a freight lift operated with pulleys and ropes. There was only enough room on the lift for the four of them, and no pesky safety features like rails. A burly proctor Nightingale, recognized as an archery instructor, stood just beside the lift. "Someone keep the hand on the rope at all times," he warned. "If you let go, the fall will kill you." "Got it," Rook answered. He was the first to climb aboard, taking hold of the control rope with one gigantic fist. The rest of them followed him aboard, and they started down. "This is going to be awesome." Nightingale looked down at the firefly lights of the glowstones illuminating the carved stone patterns of the dungeon below. "Even if it is a trial dungeon, it's about time we get out of the classroom." Zeke nodded. "I just can't wait to graduate. No more lectures, no more exams." Remy shuffled near the edge of the lift, her wings twitching a little in the slight breeze. "Yeah." Shayless was waiting at the bottom of the lift in a cavernous room cut from rough stone. Several passages opened in all directions. Down some of the tunnels, lights were trailing away, and voices echoed as groups sat down on their separate paths. "You ready, little sis?" Shayless gestured down a dark hallway. "That one's yours." "I'm ready." Nightingale drew her weapon and raised it enthusiastically. "Nothing down here stands a chance." "I'm sure it doesn't." Shayless reached out, wrapping one arm around Nightingale in a quick hug. Shayless turned, meeting each of their eyes slowly. "Take care of each other. Your team shares one grade, so your citizenship depends on it." She hopped sidelong into the lift platform, tugging on the rope. The rickety elevator started to rise, taking her with it. "Good luck." Zeke waved at her as she disappeared. He turned and headed toward the indicated pathway. His expression wilted as he got his first look of what waited for them. Damp stone, thick cobwebs, and the smell of decay. "Let's get this over with." They left the first room behind, the sound of squeaking metal pulleys fading into the distance. The stone was thick, too thick to hear what any of the other groups might be doing. Soon enough, they were left with nothing but their own footsteps and the light of their glowstones. They didn't have to go too far before they reached the first of the bellicose cubes. It was a small relic, only about a foot across and set into the stone wall of the cavern. Intricate carvings of cruel magic pulsed with red light as they neared the basin at the front. I always hate these things, though I guess they kept me safe in a couple of sparring matches, Remy muttered. It's better than getting killed, Rook said. The proctors put them here so they have time to intervene if we're defeated by monsters. Just make sure to attune yourself with it. Without your blood, it won't protect you. Attuned or not, fighting will still hurt, Zeke added. I broke an arm while learning to use a sword. Guy hit me with a cheap shot. Zeke's right. I've broken students' arms while teaching them to duel. Nightingale winced as she cut her hand along the blade of her weapon, just deep enough that a few drops of blood welled up in her palm. She held it over the bowl, watching the drops fall and boil away. Just for a moment, she felt as though all the blood in her body was being tugged toward the cube. The sensation passed, and she got out of the way. They all took their turns before they could finally advance into the encroaching gloom. The Mast, Day 1. The damp, cold air of the cave chills you to the bone. As your eyes adjust to the dark, you see a faint outline of a large rock blocking the path up ahead. It looks as if a strong push could send the boulder careening into the pits on either side of it. In any case, it looks like the only way forward.